This is the voice of freedom. We are not one voice. We are many. We are your voice. But we can only be effective if you use your voice. Your voice. This is the voice of freedom. We will not hide from the truth. We will ask the hard questions until we are sure we have the truth. Welcome to the voice of freedom, where your voice will never be silenced. Good evening and welcome to the show. My name's Carl Liebold. Nice to have you back for another Tuesday night. Truth Tuesdays, we're calling it, because we are joined by the man, or joined with the man who is, well, endeavouring to maybe lead us at the next election. It would be magnificent to see that sort of thing happen. And of course, they're about to start the fight in Victoria for the Victorian state election. We're back home tonight, as you can see. I've got the T-shirt on. And Toowoomba, magnificent night we had last Tuesday night there. Thank you for the present you gave me. I've been sick for the last 3 days. It's been fun. It was a bloody cold night and morning the next day in Toowoomba, but what a beautiful city. Absolutely stunning place. I'm not sure if our guest tonight has actually been there, but he's been just about everywhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome to the Voice of Freedom this evening, Mr. Riccardo Bosi. Good evening, sir, and thank you again for your service.
Oh, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently you can see and hear me, but I can't see and hear you.
Oh, no, really?
I'm not sure where Carl is.
I'm not hiding.
Just give him a minute or three to catch up with us. Otherwise, we'll end up with another opening to the Riccardo Bosi show, which I'm sure you don't want to hear. Just hang on for a tick. Let's see if there's
No worries. We shall.
While we're waiting, okay, why not? While we're waiting, I did an interview a couple of days back. It's up now on I think on Rumble and a few other platforms. A gentleman called AJ Roberts, the AJ Roberts Show, not the Australian footballer. Apparently, there's an AJ Roberts, the Australian footballer. This is AJ Roberts. He's a former British soldier, and he now has an extraordinarily popular international show, and he interviews people of the caliber of Dr. Malone and others, and he's across the issues. So we did that interview. So please feel free to look him up. The AJ Roberts Show. He's on Facebook. He's on Rumble. He's on a range of platforms. It looks like people are listening. I don't know if you can hear me or I can't see or hear anybody. So
okay,
there you go.
You're not hearing me at all, Riccardo. This
put
is,
up a comment.
Strange.
If you can see or hear me, or you want me to stop talking?
We can hear you.
Hey, I've got you. Good. I can hear you.
Oh, you got me now?
Yep. Did you hear any of that nonsense?
Yeah. I've been chatting away. Well, actually, I haven't. I would never talk over you. But yes, I don't know what it is.
I could see and hear nothing, so I just started.
Well, I don't know. I'm fingers crossed. We've got it sorted. You can see and hear now.
Yep, all good.
Bloody great. Well, once again, thank you, sir. Welcome. Thank you for your service. Another big week. Toowoomba gave me a cold. I know that you were crook a couple of weeks ago. How are you and the family doing at the moment?
Oh, yeah, it was no big deal. It was one of those 24-hour, 48-hour WOG things, but I've been a WOG for 62 years, so it didn't affect me too badly.
Well, yeah, I hear you there. Now, Riccardo, we've had some interesting things happen in the last 7 days. I'd like to begin with just play you a little video here of the AMA conference. I don't know if you saw what happened last Friday in the AMA conference with the Queensland doctor, Dr. William Bay, his name is. I'll just bring this up and see if we can get to play it. I'll find the right bloody thing to bring up. Oh, it's going well. Well, maybe I won't do that. It seems to have disappeared. I'll have another play. But at any rate, the doctor was spectacular. He stood up, walked over to the microphone, started telling all and sundry, apologised. He was very polite, apologised for interrupting, but started telling all and sundry in no uncertain terms what they were doing was very wrong. For me, he spoke some very powerful words, Riccardo, but the most telling thing was watching the rats desert the ship. Once they turned him off the microphone and he just started speaking loudly, enunciating clearly, as I'd like to put it, people just started, they didn't want to be seen. They didn't want to be caught on camera. And like rats from a sinking ship, they ran for the doors. Did you see that?
I did. Wasn't it just the most amazing video ever?
Yeah, I will dig
I
it all
mean,
up and play it. In
if
fact,
you, yeah, I think if you find it halfway through the show, please play it, because for those who haven't
I've
seen
got
it,
it.
I agree with you. I agree with you. They should see it because, and this is the point
Uh,
we've been making all along, as far as we're concerned. That gentleman showed absolute pure leadership. And what he did was that act of courage. Now, what people don't understand about leadership, let me just give you just a couple of groups on this, simply because people misunderstand. And A1 pushes this very hard. We want leaders. We don't want politicians. We don't want that. We want leaders. Now, first quality of leadership is courage. And that's not
yes.
me speaking. That's Aristotle, the mentor and tutor of Alexander the Great. And courage guarantees all other qualities. So it doesn't matter how smart you are. Now, here's the thing. In order to save this country, every one of us, and this is what we push in A1, courage first, capability second, because you can have all the capability in the world. But if you don't have the courage to think, say, and do what must be thought, said, and done, you might as well not worry about it. And here's the other point. All those highly educated people in the room, all those wonderful doctors in there, they're probably smarter than all of us.
Yeah,
And yet, what did we see? Bald-faced cowardice as they ran away.
absolutely. I think I've got the video now if you'd like to have a look at it, Riccardo. Let me
Oh, let's
let
go.
me just let me just bring it up and hit play. Uh, yeah, wonderful, just wonderful. Not, I'll stop it there because I know I'm having some troubles getting it out, the pictures out. But um, absolutely wonderful the way that he spoke. And while he was escorted from the venue, he did so with uh, great confidence, great aplomb. And if I was at that conference and had seen that, probably would sway me a little bit to want to join him. And he's been vocal this week too. He's been back at work at the Woody Point surgery that he works out of, and he's been doing interviews left and right with medical journals who apparently are taking up interest. This guy's a national hero, isn't he?
He's one of many, Carl. He's one of many, and it's good to see one of the fraternity of the medical profession say what's got to be said. I mean, it's about bloody time. We've had a lot of
Yeah.
international doctors speak up. We've had a few Australians, and there are, and credit where credit is due. We've had medical doctors, we've had psychologists, psychiatrists, a range of people come out. But this was probably the most forceful exposition that we have yet seen from an Australian medico.
I'm just posting the link up in the chat at the moment because people are having a bit of a hard time seeing and hearing it there. I know that there is a movement in medical circles at the moment, Riccardo. I was contacted by some people who own surgeries and representing those doctors within those surgeries who are not following the health guidelines, who are deliberately not being coerced into operating in that manner. But of course, they're doing so very quietly because to do so risks their very livelihoods. Now, I asked them why they're so worried and so scared, and what sort of power this group of faceless, nameless bastards that throw edicts at our doctors have over them. They apparently the only thing that they get is a registration fee. It's a dollar thing. It has they have absolutely no input into anything to do with medicine, and that probably explains why there's only one doctor, and that's probably one of those really well-educated doctors who's never worked in a practice in their life. I think it's got 4 accountants, 4 solicitors or lawyers on it, and a couple of other public servant bureaucrats. But they hold the key to being able to get a Medicare exemption, apparently, or a Medicare number, so that you can charge and get that rebate. And that's why more doctors are not standing up. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, APRA. And to my
Yeah.
understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding, it's a private corporation.
Yes, absolutely it is.
So which
So our
government?
doctors are being held.
Finished government-
Why?
So which,
As they don't even supply insurance services. They take a fee, a registration fee. They do nothing else, and then they start making edicts like they have been doing for the last 2 years. Um, isn't it the people that give confidence in the doctors? If the doctors are being and doing the right thing, the people will have confidence in going to them. So if doctors were to stand up and rebel against APRA, is there a way that they can be made still have access to the Medicare system without APRA's interference?
well, the question is write to your local MP and ask for a direct answer to the question: why is a private corporation controlling access to Medicare when it's the people's money being directed to the medical profession? What role does
Mm.
this private corporation play other than controlling people? And I mean it, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to do it. Write a letter to your MP and ask, why does APRA control registration and access to Medicare? Just very politely, and see if you get a reply. Everybody listening
Mm.
in, just send a very short email to your MP. Please explain, the old Pauline Hanson way. There is no
Should we
reason.
be
This is a government function, not a private corporation.
should we be asking questions? ScoMo's brother heads APRA.
Oh, what a shock.
So there should be questions asked. 100%, I would have thought. Um, I'm just having a bit of a scan down here. Somebody has asked here, Rick, if you got into power, would A1 remove fluoride from our water? I don't know. Is that
Absolutely.
possible? Yeah.
Absolutely. Of course we should. There's a story I like to tell about this. The deputy chief dental officer in New Zealand he's just one step short of the top job. Good dentist, honest man, hard working, knows his profession. And as he was made, when he was the deputy chief dental officer in New Zealand, they sent him on a world tour to discover the benefits of fluoride in water to make sure that the fluoridation process in New Zealand was as good as it could be. Well, he did his tour. He came back and he said, "We've got to get the fluoride out of the water. It's killing people." He was obviously sacked. Now,
Yeah.
I'm no dentist. I don't have to be a dentist, but I can read and write and I vote. And guess what? If the deputy chief health dental officer has the courage to stand up, and there's that word again, folks, it's courage first, intelligence second, or capability second. Courage first, to think, say, and do what's got to be done. That's what's going to save the country. But if he's got the courage to step up and say what he said and do what he did, that's good enough for me. We've got to get the fluoride out of the water.
Yep. A lot of people this week have been talking about the lack of aircraft in our skies with chemtrails. We've only been talking about people on the east coast, though. The west coast and the southern part of Australia is about to undergo, well, a winter storm of truly gigantic proportions, where we're expecting flooding all the way through basically the bottom third of Australia. Fair bit of that seems to have been created off the West Australian coast this time round, Rick. Um, we're trying to figure out, is it good or bad? I mean, what are we trying to flood here? And when the bloody hell will it all be filled up and can we move on?
Look, I don't know, mate. I'm sorry. I've had my head down all week, working hard, so I haven't had a chance to look up too much. But I've got to tell you, it's government weather. That's what the one of the A1 supporters calls it, government weather by design on
Yes.
order. And I'm right
Yeah.
today. I can't tell you whether it's the good side of the weather war or the bad side of the weather war, but it's part of the weather war. We know that for certain.
We're hearing a lot of things about this month. Mind you, we've heard a lot of things about a lot of months in the last 2.5 years or more. If you've been in this game for a while, you treat dates with a modicum of skepticism. I don't like attaching myself to dates too much. But in the last week, I have had a flood of email from people who are much more into numerology and gematria than I am. And August the 8th looks like a fairly significant day. And apparently at 8:18, there is going to be a certain release of information on the 8th. This is all to do with galactic timing. Now, I don't expect you're going to tell us a great deal about it if you know anything about it, but people are getting excited about the 8th. Should they be?
I've heard the same, and I'm not sure whether it's from multiple sources or one source that does the rounds. August is certainly a month that we've been told to watch out for, but it could be August, September, October. We're not exactly sure. But August, if you wanted to put a lazy 2 bob each way, you might put it down for August the 8th. I don't know. We are anticipating things to get a little untidy.
We're seeing things here in Australia at the moment, aren't we?
Say again?
I mean, if you're looking, we're seeing certain things here in Australia at the moment. If you're looking, you are seeing certain things. I don't know if the rest of Australia has seen it, but right now there are 8 B2 Spirit stealth bombers based at Amberley Air Force Base for the first time in history. And they're not making any secret of it. I mean, they were on the news the other night with a complete press walk around. This is not something that usually happens, folks. Even when they are in town, you don't usually get a walk around like that, Rick. So, there are things happening.
Look, perhaps they're just letting us know that the good things are happening. Good people are here doing good things. I'm not quite sure. We're literally in this sort of informational vacuum, and we're speculating as best we can. And that's okay. Don't worry about it. Just keep watching the signs. Make of it what you can. Understand that we still have a job to do here, and we really do.
Yeah.
This is potentially promising, but we have a job to do. And General Flynn said it publicly the other day. Everybody must stand up. Everybody's got to do what they've got to do to win this thing. We can't just sit back, buy popcorn, and watch the show. This is the great lie. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please understand. If you're enthused and energized by the revelations, then fantastic. Once again, do what you've got to do. Write to your MP, protest outside of his office, even if there's only 5 of you. It doesn't really matter. Organise it in your state, in good old state of Queensland. All the MPs get visited on the same day by half a dozen people. Whatever you're to do, please keep going, because we're anticipating a lockdown, and it's supposed to be a hard lockdown, meaning not a lot of freedom. So just be prepared.
Yeah. Now, just on that lockdown, we've heard that there's going to be a lockdown. We don't know if it's going to be a white hat or a black hat lockdown. I've been trying to explain to people that the difference will be pretty easy, I think, to spot. I think a white hat lockdown will have a lot more military on the street than a black hat lockdown will. Is that a fair assumption?
I don't think you'll see the military on the street. I think it'll be coppers on the street. The military will be doing things quietly in the shadows.
Oh, okay. So it won't be a lockdown as in roadblocks, that kind of thing, or if it is, it'll be police handling that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my take on it.
So we've already pretty much sorted out that most police or I think every police force in every state doesn't work for the people, it works for the corporation. So for that to happen, there must have been a significant change in the police force leadership and direction.
They're following orders. They just don't know the origin of the orders. That's what's happening.
Okay. Yep. That seems to make sense. Nancy Pelosi could be the start of World War III, Rick. Are we believing too much about that? China aren't happy if she goes to Taiwan.
Once again, the Taiwan story, this is part of the war that was going to happen had Hillary got in. They were going to have a war with Russia, and there was going to be a war over Taiwan. That was the playbook that was intended. The war with Russia didn't eventuate, and it's the war with the Ukraine. And they're using that as the alleged problem. Taiwan, again, has been a thorn in China's side since forever. Nixon recognized China instead of Taiwan. We know that, President Nixon of the United States. And that was the beginning of the shift. Now, Taiwan still has some bad things going on there. We've mentioned it before, but just so people are clued into it. Is something going to happen in Taiwan? I think so. Is it going to be World War III? No. But there are biolabs that needs to be taken out in Taiwan. And as with Ukraine, this must be done with kid gloves. You just can't go in there and wreck the joint. So, yes, things will happen. Is it going to be World War III? No. Do things have to happen there? Absolutely.
Rick, I've been running into people this week and believe it or not, I thought this show was known by absolutely everybody far and wide, but more so, I thought you were known by people far and wide. I've been talking to folks, and they say, "Oh, who do you talk to?" And you say, "Oh, I talk to Riccardo Bosi." Who? Riccardo Bosi. Right. Don't know who he is. He's the guy with the 2% tax idea. Oh, right. That's when the penny drops and they start to get a bit interested. It's interesting to me that even if I say, the former SAS guy, wears the hat, a beard, army, shouts and swears a lot, absolutely no recall at all. The 2% tax guy, just about 100% recall.
Yep.
So I think you've found your hook, mate. We need to
Well, that's why we
maybe
put it out
talk
there.
more about that. Yeah.
That's why we put it out there, because there are a lot of issues that that people talk about, and they're busy, and I get that, and that's why we put that out. The 2% tax, as I said, we're still. Oh man, I wish we had it out by now, but we don't. They're finishing off the. It's not just the tax policy; it's the economic recovery. There's a whole range of issues at play. It's got to be a sophisticated plan. This is where the intelligence part comes in. Remember, I said courage is first, absolutely, but you've got to have the wit to drive the recovery after this, and it's not just simply a matter of better roads, more jobs, which is a standard Liberal, Labor, National Greens catch cry during an election. We have to lay out a financial recovery plan that the financial experts, the economists, will look at wide-eyed in wonder and say, "My God, this is brilliant. I can see how this is going to work." In fact, if I didn't mention it last week, and if I did, forgive me, but when Abraham Lincoln printed greenbacks during his presidency and away from the private banknotes that were being printed, he printed government money. That's one of the reasons allegedly he was assassinated. There was a quote in the Financial Times in London. So we're talking during the Civil War, 1864-ish, I guess it was done. And the Financial Times in London said, and I'm paraphrasing, if this goes through, if the people control their finances, they will become richer than they can possibly believe. And it risks every monarchy in the world. And so the monarchies in the world decided that the people cannot control their own currency. That's how powerful it is. Now, we're doing the same here in Oz. Josh Frydenberg, the former treasurer, told us it was 2080 before we could recover from this. The Australian economy is a little over $1 trillion. It'll double and treble in no time, simply because the people will get to keep their money. That's the sort of the top line. On this 2% expenditure tax. And very quickly, as we did the numbers last time, I'll go through them again. Combined federal and state expenditure, 2018-2019, was about $750 billion. Receipts was about 515, I think, roughly speaking, $515 billion. So already in the hole for about 230 billion dollars. If we take away all these other taxes, no income tax, no payroll tax, no fringe benefits tax, no capital gains tax, no stamp duty, none of that stuff, take it all away, and just take 2% of every spend everybody makes, tax receipts now go up to $1.3 trillion. So we're now in the black by over $250 billion, $250 billion, now in the black. And what this means is, first of all, the government has more than enough money to do what it needs to do. And best of all, every Australian gets to keep their money. They sell a house and they make $1 million. They keep $1 million. Every cent is theirs. The only impost on anything is a 2% expenditure tax. Now, the reason why this works, and this is why people don't get it. Right now, all companies are structured to minimize their tax. And so companies just don't pay a lot of tax because that's the way it's done. But the poor old wage slaves out there, you get docked every fortnight. And so you might be collecting, let's just pick easy numbers, your gross pay might be $1,000 a week, and you come home with $525, and then you're paying on top of that GST and various other taxes, hidden taxes. And so you're really paying somewhere between 60 to 70% tax on you, depending on the spending profile. Well, it takes the burden off the wage slaves, and the entire economy pays. Now, here's the beauty. Everybody's ahead. Even the corporations are ahead because now they've got more money to play with. And so this is just one small part of the economic recovery plan for Australia. And once again, as I said, courage is the first quality of leadership. And then second is your capability. knowing what to do and how to do it. And so, as I've said previously, the financial recovery plan is only one leg of the stool. The second leg, of course, is the health recovery for the nation, and this is physical, emotional, mental, psychological, and spiritual renewal of the nation. And once again, this must be done with intelligence and finesse to make sure we get out of this hole, because the shock to the system, to the people, when they understand what's really been going, will be quite profound. So once again, high level of intelligence, high level of expertise, subtle, practical plans that deliver and work. And so that's how it goes. So I'm not surprised that people like the 2% tax idea. It's not ours. It was called the Liberty tax. It was developed by somebody else. We took the original idea, reworked it, refined it slightly. And there are many other elements to it. And this is the important basis for the recovery, because this will end. And this is what everyone listening must understand. What we're going through will end. It's going to end a lot sooner than people think. Now, we've got rough numbers. We've got 6 months of pretty rough times ahead of us, maybe 9. But that we'll go into a dip, and then we're going to come out of it now. And I've been telling the A1 people, we've been with shows like this trying to wake people up and say, this is what's going on. Please understand, this is the situation. Most of what you've been told is a lie. Now, what we've done. We've got hundreds of hours of interviews going back years, and that's all out there for people to watch. But right now, what A1 is focusing on is building this ark. And this ark has to be watertight, and it has to have enough room for everybody. And so that's what we're focused on. That's why I'm not doing a lot of outside work, but we are working very hard inside to make sure that every plank is nailed down. It's watertight. The tar has waterproofed the hull, and there's plenty of room for everybody on this ark, because flood's coming, and it's coming sooner than people think. And A1 has to be ready. So, folks, ladies and gentlemen, one more time. What can I do? I'm only one person, said 25.69 million Australians. If you're wondering what to do, join A1. Get online as quick as you can. Get involved. It'll help you get through, because it's great to spend time with people who have the same view as you. And in helping others, it helps you. And so, yeah, the 2% tax, it's a very clever idea. Not our idea, but we're the only ones obviously going to implement it. And I've got to tell you, it's a lot of fun watching this plan come together, building this organisation that's going to carry a greater number of Australians from where we are to where we need to be.
So the RBA today has upped the interest rates another 50 basis points. I think they've raised it. That brings it up to, I think, 1.8%. They've brought it up in the last 6 months or so. Where does the RBA stand in your scheme of things with a 2% tax rate? What control will these bastards have over our financial system under an A1 government?
Well, the RBA gets rejigged, rebuilt, changed, expanded in some areas, completely contracted in others. We'll appoint a new governor to it, one who knows exactly what the plan is. And so the RBA's current control, it does what it does because it has a model to operate to. We're going to rebuild it. We're going to rename it and have a different set of roles and tasks. It will control Australian currency. It'll control the value of Australian currency. As I said, Australia must control its currency, and it's going to be backed by real assets, a mix of metals, for example. And so the A dollar, whatever happens outside, that's fine. They can have whatever digital currencies and the rest of it. We're going to have an Australian dollar, which is absolutely so valuable and so attractive that people are going to want it. And that's the model we have to use. And the RBA will be involved in creating that. But it also provide services too, in competition with the private banks. So the private banks can do what they want. Now, this is nothing unusual. We had this 100 years ago with the original Commonwealth Bank, and it provided services to Australian people, banking services to Australian people at different rates to the commercial banks. Now, the commercial banks still made good money, and they still did okay. But so powerful and so effective was the Commonwealth Bank that when the governor actually died, the streets were full of mourners, because this guy was such a popular figure, because he genuinely looked after the needs of the people. And for example, they provided lower interest rates loans to people. They never went into the red. They never gouged anybody. But it was once the private banks, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the rest of them all found how effective it was in maintaining control of the nation's economy. They got in and destroyed it, and that was the whole purpose. And within 10 years, in the 30s, they had basically neutered the bank. The politicians are guilty, of course. They just sold the thing out. So this expanded, what is currently the RBA, will be changed, but it'll control the economy, because as we have now learnt, and we've known this all along, but the people have felt for the first time that this is a national security issue. If somebody else controls your money supply, if somebody else controls your banks, if somebody else controls the interest rates, you're stuffed. And that's a technical term. You're done. You're finished. It's over.
Cooked.
And so we're going to make sure we grip that up. And this new revamped RBA will serve the people of Australia.
Okay, so you're strong on defence and now you're strong on finance. How compassionate will A1 be? We've got a homelessness issue here in Australia that is very, very concerning. We have a domestic violence issue here in Australia that is very, very concerning. We have, a number of other commercially confronting things, everything from industrial waste to road construction. Where's the compassion going to come from in A1? Is there compassion under that rough exterior, Rick?
Oh, it's for the love of the people that we're doing. This is exactly the point. If we don't save the people, there's no point doing anything else. But if you give me a specific question on that, I can do it. But for starters, homelessness.
Well, okay, homelessness is a big issue at the moment in I think every state. So the poor have been pushed further west, or in some cases further east, depending on which state you're in, or further north if you're in South Australia. The folks who used to live in the outer suburbs of the cities are now moved out to the bigger regional areas. The folks who were living at the bottom end of the bigger regional areas are now right out in the country. And even then, the rents are going up through the roof, and there is no work because, for whatever reason, you've got to be jabby-jabbed or whatever to turn up for such a thing. How does this end?
Easy. It's not that hard. See, what we're suffering from is exactly what they intended to do. Go back to and let's talk South Australia, because I was there when they blew up the coal-fired power station at Whyalla and they destroyed it. And for those fans of Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged, you'll know exactly. And if you've read that book, and if you haven't read it, I strongly recommend that you do. The towering heroes in that book are phenomenal. But when they destroyed the coal-fired power station in Adelaide, in Whyalla, South Australia, I knew something was very, very, very wrong.
Yeah.
So now, what causes homelessness? Multiple inputs, but let's have a look at one. Let's say there's no work. How do you affect the work? You increase the price of power, which is exactly what they did. And there were countless companies that went broke. They just couldn't afford it anymore. And these were manufacturing companies that employed semi-skilled and skilled labor. So they're out of work. So you haven't got work. There's dad at home. The poverty sits in. They can no longer meet their mortgage payments. They're on the street. So repair the economy, generate massive opportunities for employment, and the backbone of every economy is still the small to medium-sized enterprise in Australia and internationally. And with that 2% expenditure tax, there'll be so much in motivation to work hard, because you get to keep every cent and you get to hire people and pay them a good wage for a good day's work. So all of a sudden you've got people with the finances to live, and you watch the struggle decrease. Now, at the other end, what causes homelessness? Well, what they did was the lunatic psychiatric profession, which is full of the most, you think the average doctor's are bad. Wait till you get to the psychs. My God, they're insane. They opened up all the hospitals for those that needed special help, and there are some people that just need help, and they put them in halfway houses. And there's one down the road from where I lived in Prospect in Adelaide, and these poor sods, their life was wandering out the front, smoking like chimneys, and then wandering back of an afternoon, and they were just put in halfway houses. This isn't a life. And these people drifted off, and they may or may not have come back, and they were just homeless.
Yep.
And so if we take care of the people, the deserving poor and the deserving ill, not the ones that get there because they're too lazy to work. I'm not talking about them. But there are some people, there's a section of society that just needs help. And I'll give you a number on that, just so we're clear on this. I think it was Robert McNamara under John F. Kennedy was the Secretary for the Department of Defense. And they needed more people for the war in Vietnam. So they lowered the IQ requirements for the military, and they figured the military has the best training system in the world, which it does, having gone through it. It is superb, second to none. They dropped the IQ, and they enlisted just about anybody, and they called them McNamara's morons. And these people, even with the exceptional training system within the military, these people could not find any employment within the military, which is extraordinary. So they just lacked capacity. Now, does that mean you throw them on the dust heap? Of course not. But the number's quite terrifying. It's about 10% of your population cannot find work, cannot do work. Forget find work, they can't do work. Now, having said that, there are places, we used to call them sheltered workshops. Apparently that's an offensive term now. But most of these people want joy in work. They really do. And when you speak to these people and you see the interviews, they are so pleased to be able to earn their own keep and work. Now, this isn't the most demanding work on the planet, but it doesn't need to be. It's work that must be done and can be done. And you watch the interview, you get onto it, you'll see them, and they love doing it. Now, this is what a compassionate and moral country does. See, unfettered capitalism is not a tide that raises all boats. It just doesn't. So we need to make sure that we look after the people that cannot look after themselves. And there are ways to do it. It's not hard. It just hasn't been done because the politicians don't care. They genuinely could not care less. And so our job is to make sure we get everybody off the streets and get as many jobs as possible for those who want to work and can work, but they need special care and assistance to do so. And this is the measure of a nation. The GDP doesn't matter. How do we look after our weakest? How do we look after our most vulnerable? That is the measure of a civilized nation.
Agreed.
And if you want to talk about big art, that's what we've been banging on about the whole time. It's exactly what A1 is all about.
Yeah. Rick, you talked about supply chain issues, and there's no doubt we are suffering from them all over the country in various different ways. In fact, I think the only thing that we're not suffering a supply line issue with is cigarettes and alcohol.
What a surprise.
I'm frightened. That's not good. We don't. But if there is one thing that's been shown to motivate Australians in the past, that's interrupting the flow of beer from the factory to the fridge. Do we need a beer strike to wake Australians up?
Australians need to grow up, wake up. They really do. I understand. I hear what you're saying, and that'd probably have an effect.
Yeah,
it's sad.
Sadly, it would. Yeah.
Sadly, it would have an effect. It really would.
Yeah.
We're going to lose a lot of people, Carl. We're going to lose a lot of people because they made decisions, good or bad, right or wrong, but we're going to lose a lot of people.
Yep, sure are. We're going to lose some shitheads too. The Pope being wheeled around in a wheelchair at the moment. There's talk of him retiring. I mean, didn't they retire the last one too? Because I don't think he was saying or doing the right thing, and they sent him off to a monastery on top of a mountain somewhere. This one is, well, he's royally screwed up if we're to believe what's going on is real. So, what are your thoughts on the Pope disappearing shortly?
I'd see that as a very, very good sign. It started when you saw the look on his face when he was standing next to Donald Trump and his family at the Vatican. And that was the beginning of the end for them. And that's why Trump did his visit to Saudi Arabia, Israel, and then the Vatican. He had three key targets to sort out, and they knew that it was done. It's over. It's finished. So he's just another figurehead that's about to go. It doesn't really matter. The real cleaning has already taken place. So happy days, and I hope. And I got told this many years ago, and as a former Catholic, I was saddened by it, that the Vatican will collapse. It will cease to be. And obviously for puerile childish emotional reasons, I was sad. But when you see what the Catholic Church has been up to, not the people, but the actual organization, it deserves to be destroyed. It really does.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw the images of the fires coming out of the Vatican a few weeks ago, Carl.
I did. In fact, there were more fires over the weekend, I'm led to believe.
Yeah, there's a Vatican library, amongst other things there, which contains some extraordinary history of the world, and some stuff that people wouldn't believe that the Vatican has, but they do. And it's sealed in spaces which thankfully have protected some documents from damage. A lot have been lost. some have been taken away because they're so dangerous that they don't want anybody to ever see this stuff ever again.
Wow.
And so the Vatican's done. The Vatican is done. It's a satanic pit and has been for the longest time. And as I said, the architecture is magnificent, but how can a church that claims to represent the word and actions of Jesus Christ do what it's done? It hasn't. It is the whore of Babylon, for want of a better description.
If
So
you haven't watched if you haven't watched The Fall of the Cabal from Janet Ossenbard yet, folks, I highly recommend you do that. It's available on BitChute and Rumble, and that will explain the Vatican to you. And when you learn what those angels are doing standing around St. Peter's Basilica, all gazing down on the square, you will never look at the Vatican again in the same way. Trust me. It is, it's an unbelievable story. Rick, the country is saved. Albo has said, wind power, solar power, it's going to be great. We're going to get into it, and the country's going to be pleased and happy for it. Then I heard, I don't know which Labor Party dickhead it was that came out today telling us that nuclear power is the most expensive option, and that's why the other side are talking about it. Isn't nuclear power the easiest, safest option for us as a growing country going forward, trying to increase the population and regain some of our manufacturing ability?
nuclear power provides a lot of Europe's power.
Yeah.
That's the fact of it. Look, I know that people are concerned about uranium, excuse me, and rightly so. But we have so many options for power in this country, which we should be tapping into. We really should. We've got the possibility of hydro. We got black coal. We got brown coal. We have thorium, and I've mentioned thorium before. Thorium is an alternative, is a radioactive power source alternative to uranium because it has far shorter half-life, and it's a lot easier. We have, I think, the second highest reserves in the world of thorium, and we should be and will be energy independent. We really will. There are plenty of sources of energy in this country, including the hydrocarbons, gas and oil. There's plenty there. It just needs to be correctly tapped and exploited for the country's benefit, not sold primarily off to somebody else, because the mining law in this country is a complete mess and designed to screw over the owners of this country, who are us, the sovereign people of this nation.
The sovereign people of this nation have been supposedly receiving a royalty from the miners for many, many years. I was reading about this the other day. Now, the royalty isn't much, I don't think, and nobody's living on the world boat like Gina. But is there a way we might be able to get some of these billionaires who've made their money out of the back of our land that we all share in? Everyone that was born here has a share in this land. Is there a way that we might convince them to invest some of their billions in an Australian built, owned and run oil plant so that we can start making our own fuel, our own diesel? I mean, at the back of Moomba, they've found an oil and gas field, or an oil field in particular, capable of producing more barrels of oil today than certain fields in Saudi Arabia. Now, why aren't we tapping that? Why haven't we gone to the billionaires and said, build a bloody refinery and let's start doing something for the country here?
Well,
Who's responsible for building that?
I tell you what, it's very easy. First of all, we control it. As the Australian people should control it through their politicians, but the politicians are paid off, and so they shut up and they let the miners do what they want to. That's going to change. The whole board is going to change, and the miners will still make good money, but Australia has got to come first. It's really simple. Australia must come first. And if our people are suffering and others are benefiting, there's something wrong with this equation. And what's wrong is the politicians.
We don't seem to be getting anything like. Yeah. Well, we're not getting a fair go, any kind of a fair go from them. They have been screwing us for forever. And the miners have been paying off the politicians because they've always got a few bucks for one party or the other. It's I suppose there's a couple have died on for either side, but there's also a couple of big ones that don't mind swapping money between parties depending on what they want to achieve in the next political cycle too. How do we end all that under what comes next? People are so used to greasing the wheels of power by whatever means possible. How's that going to change when everything changes?
Well, it's actually legal, believe it or not. And one of our former attorneys general, Brandis, said it is entirely appropriate for lobbyists to pay politicians to lobby for their interests in Parliament.
Wow.
So, you don't have to look hard for the reason why our politicians are corrupt. It's actually when you've got the Attorney General saying it's quite appropriate for someone to pay me as the Attorney General to lobby on behalf of a private company. But
Yeah.
it's sort of, I'm just a simple soldier, as you know, of modest capability there, Carl. But
I know
even
about that.
it strikes even me that I thought the politician was there to represent the electorate, not be a paid shill for this corporation or that corporation. But that's the level we got. So once again, all you got to do is change the rules. You just change the rules. Now, what we do is we make it we highly disincentivize a politician to take the money, and we highly disincentivize the corporate crook to offer the money. How does that sound?
Yeah.
And we'll be tracking that down because we're going to be looking at certainly at the federal level and at the state level, and even local councils, as we said last week, we'll be examining as part of our policies any examples of unexplained wealth. We hear a lot in the US, for example, how Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, been in Congress for 863,000 years and is worth trillions of dollars. Obviously, I'm being quite silly with the numbers. She's been in it forever and she is worth tens of millions of dollars. And they accept that. It's insane. How can somebody on a $200,000 a year salary be worth tens of millions of dollars? Well, it's pretty clear how. We don't get those same stories in Australia because everybody's in on the game. Nobody wants to call it out. We are, and that's the point. So we'll just disincentivize anybody doing that. They'll be spending a long time behind bars for doing that. To take money by the poly, that's got to be prima facie case of treason. And for the business person doing it, that's just out and out corruption, and they'll be going to jail for a long time too, regardless of their previous net worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Going to be a lot of people who'll be quaking in their boots at hearing that, or maybe
Oh, the
selling off
target
the
on my back is
BMW and
getting
trying to
bigger.
look poor.
Oh no, the target on my back's getting bigger. In fact, I gave I did I did an interview with a gentleman called AJ Roberts, who's an ex-Brit soldier who has a fantastic show I mentioned at the beginning at the top of this show.
Yeah.
And I gave good old Tom Rogers a touch up, the AEC, and guess who turned up at my door today?
No.
2 members of the Australian Federal Police. Now here's give me a moment or two to explain this because it's not just here we go again. It is, but it isn't. Now, first of all, I'm going to refer to my notes because I don't want to miss any part of this story
Oh
because
no.
it's particularly fun. So let me just check this out. Okay, first point: the acting sergeant and the constable were both courteous and professional, and they advised me they're investigating a complaint with respect to the Queensland state election in 2020. Now, AFP, Federal Police, investigating a state electoral complaint. Question number one: why is that?
Yeah.
And they said, I said, well, what's the allegation? And they said, and first of all, they invited me to come down and help them with their inquiries. Let's make an appointment. I said, no, I'm not doing that. Thank you very much. Not coming. And so they wanted to find out what's going on. But I'm not going to tell them, but I'm going to tell the people of Queensland who are listening in, because the people of Queensland are paying for this. The people of Australia are paying for this. And you ought to know what they're using your money for, and you should be bloody annoyed. But let me just go on. Providing a false information in the terms of my address in Queensland. Now, here's the story. We're running, my family and I were going to move up to Queensland with the intention to do that long time back. And the state election was called. We went, great, we're going to run. We had a friend up there who was also our former Queensland state coordinator, an absolute dynamo of a woman. She's brilliant. And her husband, they broke their backs so hard to work hard for A1. And we were going to stay at their place, and that was going to be our home base until we found our own place and also run the election. Now, paperwork went in. We're going to contest the election. There's a Western Sydney lockdown. We couldn't leave our home. Now, the rest of the country was fine, but Western Sydney, we literally could not leave our homes. And this went on for at least a couple of months, I think. So we're locked in. We cannot move. My chief of staff, also my beautiful bride, contacted the Queensland Electoral Commission and said, look, we're registered to contest this election, but we can't get out because we're locked down. They said, don't worry about it. Are you contactable at the address you've provided? And we said, absolutely, no problem. And they said, there's no problem from our perspective. This is the Queensland Electoral Commission. No problem, all good. Next, the Queensland border shut. So even if we could get out of Western Sydney, the Queensland border is now shut and we can't get across the state line. Could not move.
Yep.
And we had to contest the election remotely. Our campaign manager, Lisa, and she's brilliant. She's brilliant. And the volunteers were magnificent to actually run a campaign remotely in that Queensland state election. Now, a couple of questions. Why is the AEC, the federal body, using federal police to investigate a state electoral matter?
Yeah.
There's got to be a jurisdictional issue here. Now, Queenslanders, you pay for this. You need to know the answers, and that's why we're telling you the story and not the coppers. The coppers can watch this and make of it what they will. Now, it would appear, maybe I'm wrong, but giving old Tom Rogers, the head of the AC, a touch up internationally, and let's make Tom even more famous, because what was Tom doing in China in the weeks leading up to the Australian federal election, an election that was as straight as a dog's hind leg, to quote some wag that I was talking to? Good old Tom. Is he part of the Masonic filth? Is Tom part of a marionette that's just being controlled? Why would the AEC use the feds to investigate a Queensland state matter when the Queensland Electoral Commission had no problem with what was going on? It's almost like, and I could be wrong, it's almost like they're using federal departments, the people you pay, for party political purposes. You're paying for this. So now, just to wrap this up, are they trying to get me? Of course they are. And they've got to go all the way back to the 2020 state election, and Queensland's not investigating it, but the feds are. Now, why is that? They've got to all the way back. Now, you can understand, ladies and gentlemen, they have probably gone through everything in my past to find some dirt. And this is the best. This is the best they can do, to fabricate something that out of nothing. And there's nothing there, so I'm not the least bit concerned. But here's the point. They're not really after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, folks. So you should be incandescent with rage that this is going on. So if you want to, why don't you send, I don't know, your local member another email saying, dear local member, please explain why Queensland Electoral Commission sent all their votes to be counted by a Chinese corporation. Why is that? Why was the Australian Electoral Commissioner in China in the weeks leading up to the federal election? It would appear there are grounds for investigation. Now, why hasn't the AEC investigated the multiple allegations of fraud and inappropriate behaviour for the 2022 election? Nothing coming out of that yet. Put your pressure on your MP and send a polite letter. You are required to. Just send a polite letter and say, please explain. Do it in your millions, ladies and gentlemen. Do it in your millions. You want this to stop? Write to your MP. Your federal MPs have 100,000 people more or less in their electorate. Your state MPs, depending on the state, might have 13, 15, 20,000.
Yep.
Write to them. Ask questions. Every time you see something on the news that gets you gored, send them an email. Get them on speed dial. Ring up and politely ask for an explanation. Because we've got this new parliament. They're all excited. They're very excited about what's going on. But understand this, you are paying them and they are giving it to you in the neck every single day. So there you go. There's the visit by FedPol today, pursuing something that doesn't even exist. So good luck to you.
That's, well, I'm not surprised. I wonder whether or not they're going to be investigating the 2022 federal election in another 2 years' time. Is that when
Don't worry
Albo
about
might?
that, because we'll be in power and we'll get to investigate it.
Well, I trust that'll happen a little bit faster than what's currently happening in the system. Johnny Wasillo, you keep asking this question to ask Riccardo. There was a video on Telegram of Trump with Schwab and Trump congratulating him for a great job. That video is about 6 years old, so don't go getting too bloody excited about that, Johnny, and you can stop typing it in the chat because it's starting to get very annoying and very boring, as everybody else has already told you that. Now, the Vatican Library, people are pretty interested in that. Surely they won't be burning everything that's going on or everything that's been held in the Vatican libraries, will they? Because there must be, along with some horrors in there must be some treasures, Rick.
Oh, there are. And it's not on the same. I don't think they're going to intentionally destroy it, but let's just say the bad guys may not want it to get out, because there are truths in that library, I am told, that question the veracity and consistency of the Bible. Now, most people understand that the Bible is an edited document. It went through a few edits. The Jews edited the what we call the Old Testament, what they call the Torah. The New Testament was edited as well. Certain books were included, excluded. The book of Enoch, the book of Thomas, the Gnostic Gospels. There's a lot of work that wasn't done, and we understand that a lot of these parchments are actually kept in the Vatican, and they have not released those for fear of destroying their power base. You got to understand, the Vatican is just about power. It's got nothing to do with anything else. There's nothing to do with saving souls, and so we hope that not everything will be destroyed. There is one particular room which is heavily guarded, heavily protected, fireproof. Obviously, that'll be taken care of. But we'd like to see as much coming out of that as possible. I'm not sure how much we'll see or when we'll see it, but there's an extraordinary amount of history in there. It would be second only in tragedy to the destruction of the Library at Alexandria.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, which destroyed countless. We don't even know.
Yeah.
What was lost? Ancient Greek ancient texts from other areas, other civilizations.
Yeah.
Potentially, Assyrian, Babylonian, Gilgamesh, and all the stories that precede and predate the Greeks and the Romans. We have a longer history than you have been told. Much older, much older. And so we don't know what we lost in Alexandria, and we don't know what we're going to lose. Excuse me, out of Rome. So hopefully we'll get as much as we can.
Rick, there's been an interesting development in Notre Dame as well. Notre Dame, of course, caught fire a couple of years ago, and they have been rebuilding Notre Dame since. Apparently, they've discovered a sarcophagus buried some 30 meters below one of the altar areas under Notre Dame. It is a lead sarcophagus, and I don't know. They're trying to date it at the moment, but clearly it's much older than Notre Dame itself. So I don't know how available lead was as a form of coffin making back in the day, but I would have thought a lead coffin buried that deeply under what turned out to be Notre Dame might be significant.
Oh yeah, no, lead was very in popular use well before Notre Dame's construction. I've been to Notre Dame, beautiful building. No, it was well in fact, that's where the word plumber comes from, because a plumber is from the Latin word piumbum, which is Latin for lead. And when you plumb bob, lead, plumb bob, it's a weight on a string.
Yep.
And so that's the derivation of it. No, lead's been used because it was a very soft metal and easily used for pipes, until they realized that the use of lead in pipes wasn't good, because it built up lead in the brain, and people went nuts. It was deleterious to human health, but that's why they used lead for many years as piping. So no, the fact that you're a lead-lined coffin predating Notre Dame is quite to be expected. There's nothing unusual about that. Obviously, a dignitary of some sort, of some import, and that area must have been also important. It might be on one of the ley lines, for example, that circumnavigate the Earth, and that's why that's the location for the construction of a major cathedral. And so what we'll find out as the true history of the planet is revealed is there's so much more going on than what we know in the last 24 hours.
There's been some interesting space junk falling to Earth, particularly here in Australia, not far from you, in fact, out the back of Jindabyne. A large chunk of something wound up buried a couple of feet into the earth. A farmer came across it in his land. I mean, there's 6 foot of this thing hanging out. They're trying to tell us it's something off the front of one of Elon Musk's machines. It may well be. I mean, I would have thought that would burn up on the way through. What do I know? Now, I'm not suggesting an energy weapon has been used and one accidentally dropped into a paddock in Jindabyne. All right, let's not get upset or angry about that. But there does seem to be a lot more talk about what's floating around in space above us at the moment, Rick. They've really ramped that up.
I'm sorry, I can't help you on this one, mate. I'm that one completely whizzed past me. So I was tapping madly away on my laptop. I've got nothing to say on that one. I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. I don't expect you to say much about the space force that may or may not be floating around above us. I'm just having a bit of a look down my my list of things here. I've had a couple of people who have contacted me. They've got sons or daughters working in the military, and they are on exercise at the moment. A couple of them have told their parents what's going on, and they're training at night under full dark conditions using live ammunition. Now, I don't know, is that something that the Army, Navy, Air Force regularly do? Train at night without any ability to see in the dark with live ammunition? Is that something they normally do?
No NVGs.
I beg your pardon?
Without night vision equipment?
Yeah, no night vision equipment, nothing at all. You'd have to ask yourself, why would they be doing that? And you'd have
to... that's real World War II stuff, that is. Well, okay.
Well, what if you're caught underground fighting and you lose your night vision goggles? I mean, you need to be able to field strip your rifle, or you need to be able to find ammunition by feel. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's more a case of, look, if the bad guys have got NVGs, you got to have them. This is just ridiculous. It's like saying, oh, they've got rifles and we've got sticks. No. This is a natural part of your kit. If you're going into a low light or a no light environment, you need the kit to do it. Now, why they'd be training without NVGs, you have to look at the context of it, and possibly learning how to shoot and determine your fall of shot under adverse conditions, low light, no light, because the tendency is to fire high, and that way you train them to aim lower than they instinctively might, because that's the natural tendency at night. But if that's all they're doing, that's one thing. If it's part of a phased program of training, it's very, very different. And so you need more information on what's going on. Firing at night without night vision equipment in and of itself isn't suspicious. It just depends on the context of it. Yes, you strip and assemble your weapon in the dark. Yes, you've got to be able to fight in the dark if you lose your night vision gear. But once again, if you're in that situation and the other guys have got it, you are at a significant disadvantage. And this is real. Things are really turning to custard badly. So I'd need context to understand why they would be training like that.
Well, yeah, and I suppose I can't give you any more than what I've heard, and that was about all that I've heard, and that was my question too. Like, whereabouts are they? What are they? Are they just loading or unloading trucks, or are they actually running around somewhere out in the desert? But there was no more context available to me, which was a tad unfortunate. Interesting to see that.
Point out one thing, Carl. If we have any soldiers in this organisation, this gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, formerly known as the Australian Defence Force, if they don't have NVGs, night vision equipment for the entire ADF, what the hell are they doing? Preparing for the Boer War. I mean, this is probably an example of a derelict leadership. Now, as I said, if they have enough night vision for the entire ADF, then that's their job. Congratulations. If they don't, there you go. You don't need any more evidence that Angus Campbell is a complete goose. Oh, he's the chief of the Defence Force, for those who don't know.
Yes. And apparently has a nice set of high heels, but that's another story completely. Won't go and get into that too badly. Now, I've got a few questions that I've started up here, Rick, to see whether or not we can get a bit of an answer. I think I've asked a few of them. Oh, yeah, righto. The latest airstrike on the Taliban. It wasn't on the Taliban. It was actually in Afghanistan on an Al-Qaeda, or the leader of Al-Qaeda. Is this just cleaning up, or is there anything more significant to that, Rick?
Sorry, mate. I don't know. Haven't seen or heard about that one.
The gold stores here in Australia, do you think that they are actually here in Australia, or is our gold actually in the UK?
I'm surprised if we have any.
Yeah,
I mean,
really?
I genuinely am surprised. If the Rothschilds haven't gobbled it all up, I'd be bloody amazed. I heard story of a gold mine outside Canberra, which the Chinese are working very hard and dragging gold out of the country, which is illegal.
Yeah.
So if someone thinks we've got gold stores here, I'd be pleased and surprised, because I'm sure somebody else would rather take it away.
A question relating back to the tax policies earlier from Mary Ann. What happens to the ATO under the A1 tax plan?
They can have their annual general meeting in a phone box.
Yes, I think there'll be a lot of changes at the ATO. Lulu wants to know about A1 membership. She hasn't had any feedback. She's been in the system for about 3 weeks now. So 3 weeks is not a long time to be in the A1 membership system, is it, Rick?
No, it doesn't. And thanks for your patience. It does take time. There are a lot of people. We've got a lot of admins working on the applications. But thank you for putting in now, because once you get into the system, you join up as a supporter first, and then you transition to your membership once that's ready to go. And it's been trickled through slowly. But you'll be glad you did, because when membership when you finally become a full member, then you won't be part of that flood of people trying to jump in too late. So, no, thanks for your patience. Shouldn't take too much longer, depending which state you're in, but we're getting more people onto the job to get you in as quick as we can.
Under an A1 government, what would happen to the revenue-raising speed cameras, Rick, that we see all over our roads? The point-to-point cameras, the hidden speed cameras, depending on which state you happen to be in. They can be in any kind of a car or parked halfway up a bloody tree. What's the plan with A1 in that regard?
Well, that's the point. You called it the revenue raising, and they are, because we know the police forces are corporations and must run at a profit. There was certainly in every state, but certainly when I was in South Australia, it was actually stated that their job was to raise revenue, and they had to manufacture crime rather than pursue it. Now, speed cameras aren't necessary except in those black spot areas where they should be there to save lives. And I know there's one just down the road from my place, where you come down a hill, and it's a nice, comfortable hill, easy to drift over the limit, but there's a set of lights, and too many people have been hurt there. So they've got a speed camera, and everyone behaves themselves on that little stretch because it's to save lives. The police are not there to raise money. They are there to keep the peace. And anything that is just flat wrong. And as I said, no, that'll go. That sort of nonsense, revenue raising, will be illegal. The police are there, and we'll have the money to do it, folks. So that's the beauty of it. See, the reason they have to raise money is because they are there to raise money for people outside the country. Once again, this tax plan comes in, we're going to have more than enough money to do everything we need. All the schools, all the hospitals, all the roads, all the bridges, all the airports, all the seaports, widening the roads, decentralizing the population. All of this is going to happen. You're going to be moving into areas where there is work, there is infrastructure. You won't want to. It's going to be brilliant, folks. There are so many benefits to this financial recovery plan, because I'm a lazy bugger. I'd like to do one thing and watch 17 things benefit rather than a little bit here, a little bit there. So you sit back, you get the center of gravity, you get that vital ground, you make sure that works, and then everything flows down from there. But no more revenue raising from the police. They'll be happy with it. The good coppers are sick of it. I remember I heard of one young guy got a $75 fine for jaywalking. You've got to be kidding me.
God.
You've got to be kidding me. Please.
Yeah, it's disgusting the way that they've been able to, do this to us. Cattle and sheep, live exports, always a controversial thing, but it's big business here in Australia. They're looking to kill it with foot and mouth disease. So, Rick, if foot and mouth is announced in Australia, what should be our plan?
It will be announced. I can guarantee you someone's going to announce it, because in Victoria, they have this new legislation was passed some time ago, and authorized officers can come onto your property and destroy your animals without introducing themselves, identifying themselves, demonstrating they are authorized officers, and they just come in and kill your animals. This is the law in Victoria. Can you imagine that? There's a cocky, he sees somebody wandering up and starts shooting his cattle.
Yeah.
This is the law. This is the insanity of what's going on. Now, my guess is they have prepared us for a bad case of foot and mouth, and we've got to destroy the entire herd of cattle and sheep in this country. This is a setup, folks. You should be getting very angry. Once again, send an email to your MP. This isn't hard, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want to save your country? And write and explain why this legislation in Victoria was passed. Now, Australia used to be pristine in terms of foreign diseases until the blight came in from oranges from Brazil, because the import of Brazilian oranges was killing the orange industry in Australia, but there was the danger of blight. And for reasons that escape anybody with an IQ above 73, a lot of the restrictions were lowered. We know why. It was in order to destroy our industry, make it uneconomical, and potentially remove one of our competitive advantages, which was we had a pristine environment. So it was intentionally destroyed once again by the politicians. And so, yes, the announcement recently of foot and mouth, and you have to step in the bath with your shoes if you're coming in from Pakistan. And you watch what will happen. There'll be spots of foot and mouth all around the country. Apparently, the Pakistanis are going to visit every cattle farm and sheep station in Australia, and so the entire herd has to be destroyed. I tell you what, if I was a cocky, I'd be getting very cranky. I'd be making sure nobody touched my herd. If your herd's clean, it should be allowed to stay clean. But once again, they've pre-prepared this, particularly in Vic, to allow authorized officers to enter and destroy your animals without letting you know they're there, letting you know who they are, providing they are not required to provide evidence of their authorization.
Yeah.
I mean, this is insane. And, Vic has every reason to be absolutely furious. Absolutely furious.
Interesting question I've just had pop up into the chat from Bruce here. The Garma Talk Fest, why was there an American flag being flown next to our flag? The 52nd state of the USA? Somebody's asking for a friend by the looks of it.
Sorry, what's the Garma Talk Fest? What's Garma?
I'm trying to put that together at the moment myself. I think it was a thing that was held in not in America, in Europe over the last week or so, that had America, the NATO countries, the NATO alliances coming together. But anyway, I just thought, I'll look a bit deeper into that. We might have a chat about it next week. Now, Rick, the AEC. Now, has there been any further news on an investigation into the AEC? The new parliament is about to launch an investigation. Have you heard anything further about that?
No, not at all. I'm waiting like everybody else with bated breath for a fair and balanced investigation by men and women of deep integrity who have no agenda and are not in the pay of the Chinese Communist Party or the Masonic filth.
So you're not expecting anything out of the parliament then?
Well, no, I just saw a flock of pigs fly past, so you never know, mate. You never know.
Well, that's going to be the scary thing for us. But is that a wake-up moment for the country, Rick? Because there were so many issues with that election in procedure at every turn, from the moment the writ wasn't signed correctly to the moment that your vote was made invalid because some numpty who didn't know and hadn't been educated correctly to be a scrutineer didn't know what to count. And now, as you rightly scoff, how do we trust the politicians that were elected under this system that has question marks raised over it to come to an answer that says, "Oh shit, maybe we didn't get elected correctly. We'll just step away then." Right? It's never going to happen, is it?
No, of course not. You never have a parliamentary inquiry until you know what the answers are.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't watched Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, and I used to think it was hilarious, and now I can't watch it without becoming furious, simply because it's no longer a joke. And I mean it. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. You will learn much. It was produced under Margaret Thatcher, and it was at the time when the mandarins, as they were then known, of the public service actually ran the country, and the politicians were largely controlled by the public service. Now, that still happens in Oz, although The mandarins have been replaced by appointees, chief executives of departments, who are better controlled. So it's hard getting the balance right, but we've swung from one side to the other. But no, there's no way you ever have a parliamentary inquiry without knowing exactly what the results will be. The terms of reference are invariably extremely narrow and focused and would prevent any investigation of any area that they don't want investigated. And so it's just it's a facade. It's kabuki theater, shadow puppets. It's don't worry about it, ignore it. But we'll use it as a stick to beat them to death with down the track.
There is a question that's popped up in the chat asking if A1 would do like Russia and require exported commodities to be paid for in Australian dollars, creating further demand for our currency. Now, from my understanding, Russia offers the ability to buy oil in gold, not rubles. Isn't that right? And so we would
we're
be
doing
selling.
The same. Yeah, no, we've already said this a long time ago. You want Australian resources, you pay in Australian dollars. The petrodollar is dead. And if you want Australian resources, we're happy to sell it to you. You buy it in $8, and that means you're buying it in gold.
Yep.
We need to transfer the wealth, the hard wealth, back to this country. And once we've got that sound money back in play, we'll be safe from interference from anybody and everybody. It's so fundamentally important. And just so why people understand, it's so critical to have a gold, silver, platinum, palladium-backed dollar. Let's say there's a basket of currencies. Inflation is a manufactured problem, courtesy of central banks that produce this stuff, then charge $1.02 for every dollar that they produce. So it's insane. The government in the US, for example, signed up for this program. That's the basis of inflation. You're always behind. Now, the old story goes, back in times of ancient Rome, a decent toga, a beautiful top-of-the-line toga, the Hugo Boss of its time, for example, costed you a gold coin. Today, a top-of-the-line suit will cost you a gold coin. Guess what? Zero inflation over 2,000 years. Isn't that amazing? So once we get an $8, which we're going to have regardless of what everybody else has, when we get an $8 backed by real metal, something of intrinsic worth, not extrinsic worth, but intrinsic worth, inflation in this country will cease to be the problem that it currently is today.
Yep.
And people, again, this sounds like crazy talk because people are so accustomed to hearing some polished white tooth actress / model / newsreader tell us the GDP figures and how important it is and the inflation rate and how important it is. And they can't imagine that they've been lied to since forever. Now, look, I'm like most people. As a young guy, I'd watch the news. I watched the 6 o'clock news, the 6:30 news, and then the 7 o'clock news on the ABC, thinking I was getting a broad coverage of the issues at play. Right? And I'm in my 20s and I want to be informed. And a lot of us did that. And it didn't take long to realize I'm getting 3 versions of the same rubbish. And so I became quite skeptical, certainly of the news.
Yes.
I never realized how controlled it was, but I was certainly skeptical in my 20s. And so people are going to have, this is part of that shock when they find out that the people they trust have been lying to them. And I was asked a question at one of the big rallies in Sydney where there was 100,000, 200,000 people there. And she challenged me on my attacks on the ABC. She said, "Oh, look, I love what you're doing with the ABC, but please don't attack Ita. She's lovely." Ita Buttrose, for those who aren't aware, is the chair of the ABC. And she's an absolute hero to many, many women because she broke the glass ceiling. She became the youngest editor of a key magazine under Kerry Packer. But such is human nature. Please attack the ABC, but please leave Ita alone. She's lovely. And this is the reality of human relations. That's why the same actors / models / newsreaders that are giving us the goss are the same ones that will be compelled to tell the other story.
Mate, getting a few questions, people suggesting it's extremely hard to get onto A1. What is the easiest way? If you want to sign up to become an A1 member, what is the easiest way to do that?
AustraliaOneParty.com and join up. You join up as a supporter first. You put the paperwork in, working with children's check, all that sort of stuff, get the paperwork in. That gets logged in. It gets into our system, and then you shift across to a member, and your paperwork's already transferred across.
Just a couple of last ones here, Rick. Now, a little while ago, we asked you about what happened to your court case in Adelaide. After you arrived in Adelaide, were given a fine for not wearing a mask. You presented in court on the phone, didn't really give the magistrate any chance whatsoever, made a statement, hung up. Have you heard anything back from them since?
No. I received one fine in the mail, ignored it. Received a second fine with a penalty for not paying, ignored it. Received nothing else. That doesn't mean I'm not on their books. I might enter the state and they'll try to arrest me. And if they do, fill your boots, guys. It doesn't matter. Give me another fine. See, once again, and for those who didn't hear the actual recording, it was basically a statement of sovereignty indicating that they had no standing. I don't recognise what they are saying. To my mind, and I mean this quite sincerely, because they're parts of corporation, it's like my neighbour putting on a black robe and saying, I am now a judge and you must do what I say. And that's literally the authority they have. And again, when you lead, you've got to lead from the front by example. You have to show people. You've got to take the risk yourself. And that's one of the reasons I see the salutary benefit of actually being in a financially tough position with my family. Because imagine if I had $1 million in the bank, sitting back telling everybody, storm the barricades. Don't worry about getting paid next week.
Yeah.
A huge chunk of hypocrisy in that. So you've got to, when you lead, and when again, you notice I hammer this quite hard. When you lead, you've got to lead from the front by example, not from the rear by direction. And so a lot of people saying, well, what do I do? And they told me I had to wear a mask. So I said, don't wear it, but I'll get fined. Yes. And then you'll go to court. Yes. And then they'll do what? Take away your birthday? Not give you a chocolate frog? If all of us do what we must do, the system collapses. The only reason they're still in charge is we've got too many yellow hats out there that are frightened, scared, selfish, greedy, whatever. The moment we as a people stand up and say no more, it is literally finished. There aren't enough police, there aren't enough anybody to stop us. That's why I say to people, when the mandates come back and you've got to wear a mask into the shopping centres, go in a group of 20 without masks. Do your shopping and get out. Really. Seriously, folks. You have no idea the power you have. This is the time. This is the time if we want this to end. And it's been in our hands since this started. It really has. And I can understand why people went along with it because they were trying to do the right thing and they trust their doctor. But we've seen the consequences of what they've been doing and the nonsense and the cost. So please stand up, do what you got to do.
There's a topic I deliberately haven't raised with you in our time together, Rick, because it hasn't really been appropriate. It's a topic of a court case. The judge is currently retired now to consider his decision, and I don't know that we can fully talk about it yet. But I would like to get a brief overview on your feelings about the Ben Roberts-Smith case that's been heard in Sydney recently.
Oh, this is the slander allegations.
Yes, and the accusations, of course, that have besmirched the SAS name as well.
Yeah, I won't speak. I can't and shouldn't speak on the matter itself properly, but I can speak in general terms. Let's say, and I'll say what I said. Was it 4 years ago now when I was on Outsiders with Rowan Dean and Ross Cameron? From the beginning, this was a stitch up. Now, not because I knew what happened and therefore I'm saying it's wrong in law. I'm not. The way it was handled was intentionally, in my opinion, designed by the government to destroy the SAS specifically and the ADF generally. Now, the SAS is the force of choice, and that was a term coined by the then Colonel Jim Wallace, one of the most extraordinary SAS officers that's ever served in the regiment. I was his adjutant when he was CO, and I was one of his staff officers when he was Commander SF. And it was largely due to Jim Wallace's incredible efforts. I mean, work ethic, brilliant man of real character too, by the way. And it was thanks to him that the Special Forces community grew from the ugly duckling, as is referred to in the documentary about the SAS, to what it is today, which is it is the force of choice. Now, the force of choice meaning whenever there's an international incident, the request comes in, can we please have some of the lads from the regiment, please? Which is a cause of some jealousy within the Defence Force. But from the political perspective, they needed to make sure that the SAS was neutered. And so old mate Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister at the time, and the politicians were allowing the information to drip feed out into the public to drain respect, trust within that organisation. It was done, in my opinion, absolutely intentionally to destroy the SAS reputation and to destroy specifically, and the ADF generally. Because politicians, particularly, I'm not saying Malcolm's corrupt, because Malcolm obviously did the best for Australia because he's just a wonderful, selfless man that would never do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But there were some corrupt politicians in Canberra who wanted to make sure that the ADF was not an impediment to what was coming down the pike. And so that was the context of the whole Ben Roberts-Smith saga. Now, I've heard a couple of stories, and excuse me for a minute. I've heard a couple of stories about what happened, what didn't happen, why it happened. Oh, dear me.
Got a cramp.
Excuse me. Be right back with you.
That's all right.
I've heard a bunch of stories. What people have to understand is that bad things happen in war. Bad things happen in war. Now, if Ben Roberts-Smith, let's take Ben Roberts-Smith out of the equation, and the fact that he decided to sue somebody is a lesson for everybody. Strategic error, because then he could be questioned on a range of issues that may or may not have been raised elsewhere. But that's a separate problem. Here's a question for him. A soldier is required to disobey an unlawful command, even in the heat of combat. If a soldier is told, shoot that individual, and it is contrary to the law of armed conflict and the rules of engagement, which are two formal documents, he's required to disobey that command. No problem. Tough call. That's what soldiers understand. But here's my question. Why has every senior officer remained silent and executed patently unlawful commands? If you're going to hold a digger under the intense pressure of combat to make the right decision at the right time, must we not hold our senior officers accountable for decisions made in the cool light of day, with plenty of time for reflection, that are obviously illegal? Now, let me give you an example, or unlawful, or just plain bloody wrong. And I gave this gentleman a touch up on the AJ Roberts show, but let's make him famous in Australia too. Timor, East Timor. 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel John Caligari, who later became Lieutenant General John Caligari. He told his men, unless you get jabbed, you can't deploy. Well, soldiers being soldiers, they just can't wait to get into a fight. That's why they join. And we trust our commanding officer. He said it's all right, so let's get jabbed. They were unknowingly used as crash test dummies for Big Pharma. They were given trial drugs. Let me say that again. This battalion of soldiers, this battle group, were given untested drugs as a user trial. The politicians and the generals knowingly injected their soldiers with potential poison. Now, over 100, and that's a big percentage of the group that went over 100 came down with psychotic episodes, and there are probably more that just disappeared into the darkness because they went mad. And Lieutenant General John Caligari, let's make him famous. Good on you, John. I hope it was worth it, mate. I really do. He abandoned his troops, and so did every senior officer, knowing exactly what's gone on. That includes General Sir Peter Custard Guts Cosgrove, the hero of Umboto Gorge in East Timor. What have they done for the diggers?
Yeah, nothing.
What have they done for these diggers? Nothing. They abandoned them.
Nothing.
They allowed them to be used by Big Pharma to test drugs, and over 100 destroyed lives.
Does the
Now,
government receive money from Big Pharma to allow testing on the soldiers, on the Defence Forces?
the, I don't know. Maybe we should refer to Brandis, Senator Brandis, ex-Senator Brandis, now High Commissioner in London,
Yeah.
or maybe he's been replaced, and just checks to see who was lobbying for Big Pharma in relation to that particular little crime against the men
Mm.
of the 1st Battalion Battle Group. Now let's go in a wider context now. Let's say that this was East Timor was a valid war fighting the good fight for good cause. Would it be wrong to suggest that this whole war was concocted, was a fake war, and General Sir Peter Custard Guts Cosgrove, the hero of Umboto Gorge, and you fans of Blackadder will know my reference there. Would it be wrong to suggest that possibly it was concocted war between Big Oil, who wanted access to the gas and oil fields between Timor and Australia, to partition a section of Indonesia off, call it East Timor, and then negotiate the oil and gas contract, which ASIO, which allegedly was spying on the negotiations on the East Timorese side to get the best deal, of course, for Big Oil and Australia. Now, it would be terrible if the entire war was a lie. So, from injecting our soldiers to conducting an entire war so Big Oil and somebody else can get paid to rip off the oil fields that were rightly the East Timorese. And now, just to put a final bit of context onto that little story for you, these are the same natives from Timor that helped the Australian coast watchers up there and would save the lives of shipwrecked Australian airmen and sailors that washed up on the islands up there and looked after them during World War II. And this is the thanks that the great nation of Australia, under the leadership of various political parties and the loathsome cowards in the Australian Defence Force who remained silent. Now, I know it seems like I've drifted a long way from Ben Roberts-Smith and bad things happening in Afghanistan, but you can see why I have more patience with a soldier under combat conditions to generals turning their back on their men, allowing them to be injected and their lives destroyed, and there is no consequence. And for those of you who think I am going a little too far with Lieutenant General John Caligari, retired, and General Sir Peter Custard Guts Cosgrove, you think I'm a little bit tough on them. I've sat in on good old Cosgrove's CDF's conferences via links from various headquarters, and none of them have seen a more embarrassing example of ego between him and his service chiefs. My God, you should see it. It's an embarrassment. Cosgrove's like to sell himself as the diggers general. Yeah, right, Peter. So if you think I'm being rude, and a lieutenant colonel shouldn't be criticising the hero of Australia, Sir General Sir Peter Cosgrove, the way I am, do your research. Look it up. Ask for anybody that's served under him and not part of the Masonic filth. These gentlemen and a number like them, the reckoning is coming. And these people actually think they're still generals. They don't realise that that rank was a gift from somebody else on behalf of the Australian people. They genuinely think they're seriously important people still. The reckoning is coming, and Cosgrove and Caligari, and I can list a whole name. I could put out a whole list of names if you wish, but I won't. Let's just do them slowly, to quote Paul Keating.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the best way to go. I think Paul Keating's being done slowly at the moment too, isn't he?
Yeah, we can only hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Shoes that he wears now. Oh man.
Rick, I'd like to, not now, we're getting a bit long in the tooth for it tonight, but at another point, I would love to talk Irian Jaya with you, West Papua. It's another area of concern for the military, at least in Australian terms. We don't hear much about it, but there is quite a lot of, bad crimes going on in that part of the world. And I know that certain parts of our defence forces go there and train. They hide in trees and watch what's going on, but they don't act on it. So that's something in future I would like to hear how A1 might look at what's going on in that part of the world and how Australia might be able to do more than watch and do something about it.
Happy to talk about that. I spent a couple of years in Papua New Guinea. Back in 1991, I was the senior instructor, infantry training wing at Goldie River Training Depot just outside Moresby. It was an illuminating couple of years.
I was going to say that's a story I'm very keen to hear. I know some people who spent some time in Moresby in the banking industry, living behind large fences with very, very, very big dogs. So there was certainly the Wild West back in the 90s, as far as I can figure out.
Oh, look, I'll tell you about the time. I was 9 months into the 2-year posting, and I was looking out the window, and a couple of rascals and their gang members jumped the fence, and it's a 10-foot cyclone wire fence with 3 strands of barbed wire and razor wire on top, and they were up and over in my garden. And I'll tell you how I'll just leave that hanging, and I'll tell you how that ended up.
I look forward to that. We'll get into that next week. Riccardo Bosi, thank you very much for joining us again this evening. And
sorry, before you go, sorry, mate. We won't be on next week. Unfortunately, I've got enough work for 10 men. But this won't be the last. But I'm going to have to take a break for a bit.
Roger that.
Let me just check. There's something else I've got to cover before we go. Yeah, there is just one. This is important, guys.
Sure.
One of the things I'm working on is Law of War parts 1 to 10, and this is the summary of Australia One's end state, which is a moral, sovereign, self-reliant Christian Western democracy, which is economically powerful, militarily intimidating, politically free, socially cohesive, and culturally vibrant. So I'm doing a piece to camera on each of these. Now, the first one's already done. That sets the scene. I'm just about done Law of War Part 2, and then Law of War Part 3, etc. But the first part is a moral people. Now, why this is important is because this underpins everything that we have to do. We must become a moral people. And these are questions, and you'll get to hear it. And compressing thousands of years of morality and the lessons of morality into a 20-minute talk is an interesting challenge, but we're doing it. And it's just about done. But what's critical is this. You've got to ask yourself this, because unless we're a moral people, nothing else matters. And so you've got to ask your questions. What is morality? What is right and wrong? What is the source of morality? How can we agree to what is moral? How do you actually construct a country where morality is important? What role does government have in the morality of a nation? So these are questions, and many more will be answered. But just understand this, that unless we are a moral people, we have no future. We will cease to exist. Yep. And here's my definition. I'll leave you with this, then we'll go. A moral people is a group who agree on the difference between good and evil behavior, and then think, speak, and act to advance one and destroy the other. Now, this is why courage is the first quality of any leader. Courage, because courage is required to think, speak, and act to do what's got to be done and stop what's got to be stopped. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Keep your ears out for the Law of War series coming out. It'll be on the A1 website as well as our Rumble and other platforms. So thank you very much for your patience and your indulgence, Carl.
Thank you, Rick. Well, if this is going to be the last one for a while, I've been saving a question up for just this occasion. Over your left shoulder, I can see there is a guitar case in the corner. Now, we occasionally get the odd guest to come on and sing a song, one that they've written specifically. But in your case, I would be prepared to wear the copyright if you would come on and sing Kumbaya. Would you play that for us and play Kumbaya?
Well, it's not a guitar. It's a cello.
Oh, I beg your pardon. There you go.
Yeah. And you don't want to hear me play the cello because if you've heard a cat strangled, that's about all you're going to get. And Kumbaya is my favourite song, I can tell you that. I'm a more praise the Lord, pass the ammunition kind of guy.
Well, I had to ask. Thank you very much once again for your service, sir, and thanks again for joining us tonight. Well, I look forward to whenever we can do it. I am planning on coming to Sydney, so you never know. I might just turn up on your doorstep and we'll do a doorstop there. But look forward to talking to you again in the not too distant future. And once again, I know it's a very busy time, and I'm sure if you've got something you'd like the people to know, you'll get on the Voice of Freedom and let them know it.
You bet.
All right, mate. Thank you very much for your time, and well, we'll talk to you again very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, Riccardo Bosi. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Like and share this if you like. Our other two channels, Nun2K and Carl Liebold, Voice of Freedom, I think I regain control of tomorrow. So we'll be back on the main channels tomorrow. and we'll see, well, what's going to get into in the next week or so. For the rest of the week, got some interesting stuff coming up. We've been trying to get to Cass Smith about, the financial system, and we've been just having a clash of diaries really has been the problem. But the plan is Thursday night, Cass will join us at 7:30, and we will talk Nasara Jasara and all things financial with that. The aim tomorrow night, of course, will be Patriot 101. We'll see what sort of stories he's got for intel for us. And Friday night, we'll see what's going on with the Friday night free-for-all. Don't forget, looks like the 12th of August at Harvey Bay is going to be on. That's a Friday night. So if you're looking for a bit of a night out, come up to Harvey Bay and join us for that. I'll get the details out for that this week as well. Once again, folks, thank you very much for joining us, and go and check out the website, Voice of Freedom or vofhq.com. It's still a landing site, I think, at the moment, although I did get a message saying it might just about be ready to go live. So if that's the case, woohoo, we'll be populating that with a bit of news and associated other bits of things. And Project Matilda, still working on that. Hopefully we'll have some really good news for you on that today. I know Guru was trying to do a test this afternoon, I think, on it to see how the streaming went. Fingers crossed it went well. And we will be on there. And we'll get rid of these bastards that keep silencing us on YouTube. Well, they silence us. We just put up another 4 channels. That's how it works. But at any rate, the main channel's back tomorrow. None 2K and Carly Bell, Voice of Freedom, I think, will return tomorrow. I think one of the other ones is still a week away from coming back. At any rate, we will keep you up to date. Thanks again for joining us tonight, folks. And there is a lot more coming up in the days and weeks ahead. Don't go anywhere. We look forward to keeping you informed right here on the Voice of Freedom. Have yourself a great night.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!